Welcome back to the PetaPixel podcast, everyone. This is Jaron Schneider, and I'm joined by my friends Jordan Drake and Chris Nichols, who have had one heck of an early start to this week because there was a lot that was announced, and it's all from Sony, and that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. This is one of the larger launch days for Sony in quite some time. Do you guys have fun with those the two cameras and the lens? Do you enjoy shooting with them?
I like the A7C II quite a bit, and I could see myself using the R as like a travel landscape camera. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed them very much, and it was nice to see that they've kind of gone beyond the entry-level aspect of the cameras, and we'll talk about that. And then the 1630, yeah, in some ways. And then the 1635 was, of course, really nice. I mean, it was optically a beautiful lens. That's always fun to test when you have a lens that's quite exceptional in a lot of ways. In some ways, it had some issues, and we talked about that. And somebody pointed out that this is a great expensive setup if you want to take pictures of sticks in water. A reference to, of course, all my slow shutter speed pictures that I took at Margaret Falls. Yeah, sticks of water. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Beautiful.
Where's the joy?
We'll dig more into what your thoughts were on that beyond what you said in the review videos, which everyone should read, or by read I mean watch, and also read because Chris writes. Man, I'm all over the place today. As you can tell, I'm a little frazzled. Them publishing the videos also goes along with us doing a bunch on PetaPixel. So I was up late yesterday and I'm early this morning. But I do think we need to talk about what the heck Sony is thinking with its camera lineup. And that's going to be our main story today because it is getting out of control. In addition to that, we're going to talk about a couple of other cool stories that happened in the last week. Ricoh, the GR3, is just like super popular, even though it was announced 4 years ago. And then Canon has a new lens patent, and it is probably the weirdest design I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys will talk about it.
It is cocoa bananas, yeah.
All right, let's get started.
All right, so we'd like to thank our sponsor for our podcast episode. It is OM System. Today's podcast brought to you again by OM System. For over 80 years, OM System has been pushing the limits of technology to put the most advanced cameras and lenses in the hands of photographers and visual creators. Whether you're photographing grizzly bears in the Alaskan wilderness, documenting the most remote landscapes in the world, or, shooting a whole bunch of fly fishing like I do with my OM camera, the OM System line of cameras and lenses was designed for the task. They're lightweight, they're portable, they're rugged. The OM1 and OM5 give you great image quality. I love the conceptual photographic tools, higher res, handheld mode. You can capture beautiful, stunning detail up to 80 megapixels. ProCat mode is a game changer if you're a wildlife photographer. It really means you're not going to miss the shot as you're tracking animals. I also do love the live composite feature. It takes the guesswork out of any sort of long exposure photography. So it makes a lot of issues that we had in the past or problems that we had in the past remain in the past because they work fantastic now. OM System is making truly incredible advancements that make the lives of us photographers both easier and exciting. Definitely check it out. Visit explore.omsystem.com/petapixel to learn more.
Well, thanks again to OM System for sponsoring the PetaPixel podcast. We wouldn't be here without you.
And that would be terrible. We appreciate it. Thanks, OM.
So let's talk about the news this week. Let's start with the GR3. It is so popular that Ricoh is struggling to make enough of them to fill global demand. It is mainly affecting Japan and other Asian countries where it's basically on a 2-month minimum delay. Wow. You can still get them in the United States. I did not check the camera store. I don't know how they're doing with their stock of GR3s, guys. But from Adorama, for example, they're expecting like a week delay between when you order and when they ship. But I don't know how much longer that's going to stay that low. What is up with this camera suddenly being so popular?
Yeah, it makes me think a couple things. I mean, first off, is it something to do with the popularity of the Fuji X100
and how I thought it is?
Yeah, and how difficult it is to get the
different. Camera. Like this is literally pocketable, while the X100V isn't.
And it's got a better lens. And so it's like, there's this obvious push and desire for people to want these small, compact, fixed prime pocket lenses, which is again why Jordan and I have been saying for years, Panasonic, you need to be making some compact cameras again. I don't know why they let that go, but it's funny that it's so popular. The other
Do you think this is a case of like a dad walking into the store, like, my little girl wants an X100V for her TikTok, and they're like, I'm sorry, here's the next sort of similar thing, and now there's too many dads with too many daughters at the camera stores, and it's back ordered.
Yeah, we don't really have camera stores here in the United States anymore, except in New York. Like, I can't actually walk to a camera store anymore.
Then they're on the phone with B&H panicking.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Chris. Jordan and I were out shooting our episode in Calgary just recently, and this fan came up and he's like, "Oh, I love your show! Like, so great! Thanks for doing your show here in Calgary. It's great to see you." And then, of course, I noticed at his waist he had a Fuji X100. I'm like, "Oh, which X100 is that?" And he's like, "It's the X100V." And so then, I contemplated robbing him. I contemplated. Be like, appreciate that you love our show. Hopefully you don't remember us, but give me your camera. But it was neat to see one in the wild. And I guess, the desire is so high. There's other compact cameras though, right? That have fixed lenses. I wonder if they're having the same success.
I mean, that's what's really odd about it. Like, the older X100V series. I've seen Fujifilm X70s. Remember that? Like fixed lens 28 that could not focus to save its life, but people are still like paying good money for it. I mean, everybody wants this style of camera. And I do think it's kind of related to all the excitement about film point and shoots as well. The value on them has really exploded as well. And now we even have like Ricoh Pentax saying, hey, our first film camera is going to be a fixed lens point and shoot.
But I'd be curious to see, like, are Fujifilm like X70s popular again, used?
They're fetching more money. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Nikon made one as well. Camera. What was the Nikon one that they made? The APS-C?
They made the Coolpix A as well.
Yeah.
I haven't seen many of those, but I don't think many were produced. I mean, Chris, it's been a long time. What do you remember about shooting with the GR3? Because I think it's been like 4 to 5 years. What is your opinion on that camera?
Well, so I mean, I do like the lens, right? I like having that more 28 millimeter kind of range as opposed to 35. So that was the first thing that I loved. Handling is beautiful. I mean, I have had a chance to play with the Ricoh GR film camera. I think I had I forget what it's called, maybe an R1, RS1, something like that. But it was similar kind of form factor. And I mean, I love that. My only complaint with the GR, their menus are they look like old Windows DOS programming. Like it's very
like Commander Keen setup.
Yeah, it's very sort of Zork inspired.
I think Zork was text.
And it works. It works fine, but it's not like a pretty easy to use interface. It was like basically one big scrolling menu. But otherwise, I mean, the snap focus was nice. Images were certainly beautiful out of it. As I say, I love that lens. So I enjoyed it.
I don't know anyone who has this camera, and the people who have this camera are they're very quick to tell you that they have this camera. So you know who they are. None of them have made many complaints. All of them are like, I love that I purchased this camera. So happy that I have it. Like no one's been like, I bought it, but I don't like it. Nobody has
said that. And then they made
that.
those sexy limited editions. Like
they have 3 or 4, and all of them I like. I kind of like the orange one. I think that's the outdoorsy one. One thing to think about that might be a reason why this is suddenly so hard to get, especially in Asia, is because China's demand for cameras overall has just skyrocketed since they have, I think, been allowed to actually travel again. When it was restrictive here in North America, and I don't know how it was in Canada, it was probably relatively similar. But during COVID, we were all basically not moving from wherever we were, trying to go outside as little as possible. However much it was that for us, it was significantly worse for Chinese citizens. Yeah. They were really forced to not do anything for years. And so I think there was a lot of pent up desire to go somewhere. And now that they are basically being allowed to again, all of them are buying cameras to go do tourism stuff. So they had a 44% increase in sales this past quarter compared to the previous quarter of 2022. They are easily the largest in the world.
Well, I think China has a lot of people too. I don't know. I believe so, if I recall correctly.
That's the word. I mean, I have a very close friend who, as well, Chris Tia, who's a teacher there.
Yeah.
And she was saying like, it's just now starting to feel like it did pre-COVID, where I think we've had, well over a couple of years of that. So
we just
and they also, we were even seeing this trend before COVID, where they were like the full frame camera, medium format cameras, sales were just exploding over there. So they're into like high end cameras, but also apparently really compact, fun to use point and shoot. Well, not point and shoots. It's a good. It's still point and shoot style.
Pocketable street camera. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's chat about this lens patent that I just kind of sprung on you guys right before we started recording. So I wanted you guys to get a second to look at it. But Canon has patented probably the weirdest design for a lens we've ever seen. It has a bunch of internal moving parts that appear to flip like teleconverters that are inside the lens body up and around it so that you can change a prime lens into a different prime lens. Am I describing this well, Chris?
It's like you have your main prime lens, all the elements and groups together as normal, and then behind it you have these assemblies of basically just basic teleconverter elements, and it looks
lots
like
of gears, so many gears.
Looks like they basically just flip up out of the light path and then flip back down, right? Like it's not from an engineering standpoint that crazy, but certainly from an application standpoint very interesting, because it means that you can make sort of a fast prime like a 50, and then it could also be maybe a slightly slower 85, for example, right? Or 100 mil. Kind of an interesting thing. I don't know how similar it is to Leica when they did their Tri-Elmar. It's a very different idea, but that same kind of idea.
Change the aperture, so it couldn't be a teleconverter in the Leica. But a very similar idea. I mean, I hope they go, looking at this design, go full steampunk with it. Like, make loud sounds when you click the teleconverter and like...
and it takes time, and it pushes out steam as it's like powered by that. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I mean, what is cool about this is that they're doing it with a prime. Like, obviously, this technology isn't crazy. Like, a lot of the professional wildlife telephoto lenses have a similar setup, right? Where you've got teleconverter elements that you can put in or out of the light path, all built into the housing. But of course, with a long telephoto, you got lots of real estate. Whereas here, we're talking about a fairly compact prime lens. Obviously, the design's going to be larger than if it didn't have these elements, but it's neat. It's a neat idea.
It's compact in the sense that it doesn't stick out that far. It's still, it's going to be chunky. Like, looking at the size of it,
it's going to be bulbous.
At least the diameter is at least the height of a camera. I don't know. I don't think you could put a video plate under this, because I don't think it would fit flat.
Yeah, maybe it comes with a custom riser. And I mean, you're going to need a custom lens bag. There is nothing on the market that's going to fit this weird oddity.
It's like dual primes, right? It's like a cool dual prime kind of idea. So
I think this is a very cool idea that Canon internally, their engineers, will make a working prototype internally and realize this is fragile as hell. There's no way that this is going... We can't even guarantee it'll make it to the store and still work. So this was cool. We own the patent and we're moving on, because I just don't think that this is a good idea from just a usability. Like, this thing, I don't know, rattling around. Can you imagine checking this on an airplane?
Yeah, I get, but I mean,
No, they'd be like, fine. Put your wizard technology away. We don't want that on an airplane. I remember, too, they had a big telephoto in EF mount that went, I think it was like a 200 to 400, something along those lines. And when we were working at the camera store, we had to caution customers, like, do not be autofocusing or zooming the lens when you engage this teleconverter. You can break it. And that's like a professional optic. Now, since then, like, Nikon has brought out teleconverters in their lenses, and they've told us that there's no issues with that, but I'm still not autofocusing or zooming while I'm changing the element. It still seems fragile to me.
This patent looks pretty solid. I mean, it's not amazing engineering. It's basically,
it
elements.
Makes sense.
There's too many moving parts is what I'm arguing for me to feel comfortable, because this is not even getting into the autofocus system either. There's other moving parts in here.
Sure. But I mean, if you drop a 50mm 1.2, you're screwed either way, right? I mean,
I just think you could rattle this thing, and it would eventually, like, you'd hear like a sprinkle, bing, and then it wouldn't work anymore. You'd hear it rattling around in there. All right. Okay. So with those out of the way, let's talk Sony. We'll start easy, and we'll move into difficult. And so let's start with very simple: the completion of the G Master Zoom trifecta.
Go, Chris.
Yeah, 16-35
yes.
f2.8 G Master.
Yes, so Sony, of course, has improved their G Master lenses. The original 24-70, the 70-200 were stopgaps, but they left a lot to be desired. They didn't compete with their contemporaries. So they've updated those. And I mean, the new 24-70 is one of my favorite lenses I've ever used. The 70-200 is compact. It's crazy sharp. So Sony had a very high standard. And it makes sense they left this to the end because the original 16-35 f2.8 was actually not a bad lens, right? It was
not even that old.
No,
yeah,
like, it's 6 years, yeah. But this new one finally has replaced it. They managed to reduce the size. They added an aperture ring, which for some reason a lot of people are very upset about. It's nice and compact, and optically it's nice. I mean, the only knock I would give it is the ghosting is pretty bad. Like there's a fair amount of ghosting. Bokeh is nice, not like the nicest, but it's all right. But it is sharp. It is sharp and consistent no matter where you focus. Even at wide open f2.8, it is very sharp, very good contrast. So I was quite impressed by that. Looking at the charts, I was like, oh, this is a pretty neat lens. And on top of that, 16-35, I think, is a classic general purpose landscape lens. So it's going to be popular, I think.
It's one of my favorite focal lengths.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it's good. Not that I was expecting anything else.
Sony's been on such a crazy roll with their optics.
They haven't made a bad high-end lens.
No.
Since the 24mm 1.4. I mean, that I really consider the turning point for all of their lens design. And you have to remember, too, because Sony's been doing mirrorless for so long, when they brought out the original 24-70, 70-200, they were comparing it to DSLR lenses, right?
Yeah.
Like the Canon and especially like the Nikons theirs weren't great compared to what we have now. Where the 16-35 came out once we were already starting to see lens design really improving. So I liked that lens then. But when Chris sent me the charts and I'm clicking through and I can't tell, usually it's like, oh yeah, this one's sharper, has, more vignetting or whatever, but they all looked identical. Like whether it was wide open or stop down, focused in the corner, focused in the center. It's nuts how good this lens is. Like I always review as stuff's coming in because I'm editing the images. And I think this is probably the best wide angle performance I've seen in a zoom. But of course I haven't shot all those older lenses on our new lovely test chart. So it's tough for me to compare, but definitely one of the best zoom ultra wides we've ever seen. It's nuts how good this thing is.
Well, that's good to know. I like it. They're not as flashy and exciting when a new lens comes out as like a whole new camera body. But I think that lenses are so important that it's nice to see continued emphasis on making good ones. So I'm happy that Sony keeps doing it. I will say I made this argument years ago, but I find Sony's lenses to be a little too clinical. In this case, I think it's fine for a lens that's this purpose. I think that I'm more referring to like their portrait primes. They don't have any character to me. They are just pure performers. And I like a little character, which means usually less than perfect performance when you look at a test chart.
Right. So you're more of a Leica. You're more of a Leica guy than you are a Zeiss guy.
I like it when a lens fringes a little. I like a little of that. I think it's neat to know that you're shooting with a specific lens when you can see it. But when it comes to like these ones, all of these zooms in this trifecta, I think should be clinically perfect lenses. And I think this is a really good example of it. I'm happy for them. I'm glad it works.
Do you think this is just another one where Sony is like, shut up about our lens mount? Look at how good this ultra wide is. Because this should be one of the most difficult types of lenses, having a smaller lens mount that's further away from the sensor plane, and they're killing it.
Do people still actually think that matters?
Oh, Sony's funny. They're kind of like they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're a little vindictive.
They do.
They got
a good
little
way. Guy personality.
Where it's like if somebody says, if it gets out like their lens mount sucks, like their pro lenses aren't good, that they're just going to take that. But they're going to stew on it.
Who says that? Just random people on the internet?
Oh, tons of people said that.
I don't understand where that comes from. Their lenses in the G Master series have been outstanding for years. How can you possibly argue they're not good?
because the other manufacturers do. I mean, like Nikon and Canon both made big deals at their launches of like, look how much bigger our mounts are, and that'll give us optically superior lenses. And like Nikon dropped a Noct on us, which no one will ever use. Like, I think Sony's making a very compelling point that as long as you have some of the best lens engineers in the world, then this is less of a detriment than we might have thought when Nikon and Canon.
I'm not a Sony guy. I've shot Sony, but I don't enjoy shooting Sony, but I've used them for years. And the way that I understand it is that the larger lens flange, or the mouth, or whatever you want to call it, it only makes lens design easier. It doesn't make it exclusive. So like Sony is capable of making the same stuff if they wanted to. It just takes a little bit more work, which they clearly can do. So I guess the propaganda worked. People actually believe that the size of the lens mount it matters that much.
Yeah, I mean, Sony's like, love them or hate them. I mean, I've always said their cameras don't have much soul. They really don't, right? They do feel like tools, but a lot of people want photographic tools that just work.
Yeah.
And love or hate Sony as a company, love or hate their ethos and how they do things, you cannot dispute their technological prowess. It's ridiculous to do that. So you have to show respect for that, and they do a great job. I mean, there's no disputing it. So yeah, not sexy, not soulful, but absolutely capable every time.
So I guess that kind of leads into the next part, which is the two new cameras.
Yeah.
These two new cameras now make Sony's camera line real big. We're going to get to that after. Is there anything that came up during your time with these two cameras that you didn't feel like you spent enough or got to spend enough time on during your review? Is there anything else you want to say about them? Because these weren't review units because they weren't final firmware. Yeah. So we'll do a review of them later. But based on what you had, go ahead.
More so video. Hey, Jordan, we want to test overheating, really, really kind of see that. But this is as sexy as a Sony gets. So I do like that.
Yeah, I do feel like you got that across very clearly in the review. I mean, it looks better than other Sonys. I don't think it's a quantum step.
No,
forward,
it's not.
I really feel like when I was editing, I was kicking myself a little for a point I should have made but didn't, which is that if you're looking at it as a hybrid tool, the A7C2 is, as long as the overheating doesn't wind up being a problem, a better video camera than the A7 IV. And I don't know if I made that as clear as I should have, because they have added things like their breathing compensation, their auto reframing to this camera. And it drives me absolutely crazy with Sony. I've said this before. A lot of these features they could add in firmware to the other cameras. But it's always like, if you want our latest software features, you're going to have to buy our new cameras. And it drives me crazy. I think it's a real problem. The A7R5, it's just, do you want a smaller body for less money?
Yeah.
It's a much less complicated decision, I think, because the A7R5 is a better body in every way, except for the price. But it's very difficult with the A7C2 or the A7 IV because, I want the better electronic viewfinder. I like the handling on the A7 IV more, but I would get the A7C2 for those extra features.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I agree. Like the A7C2 in a way seems like the more compelling. I shouldn't say compelling option. I'd say it's the more exciting release, I think, because it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It really is the one that updates over the original A7C in a pretty big way. It's nice looking. I mean, I could see, though, both cameras for street photography. I think this would be fantastic. They do have a lower profile. For travel, I think this makes a lot of sense. And, people are making good points, and we made the same points. If you're a pro and you're looking for a professional camera for wedding shooting or for studio work or whatever, it makes more sense to get the A7R5 or the A7 IV, where you're getting dual card slots. You're getting actually better battery life, even though they use the same battery. I think you're getting, just in some cases better IBIS or, a little bit better control scheme. That might be nice too. So I think in those regards, it makes sense. But if you don't need that, if you want a backup camera, these are fantastic winners. I mean, they're excellent little cameras.
I want to make a couple points. First of all, I kept thinking back to when I worked at the camera store, when I was looking at these cameras, like you want to just have like, and then you spend a little more money and you get these features. But Sony makes it so much like, well, you spend a little less money, you'll get these features, but you'll lose these features. These software features aren't going to be available in this. This might not get firmware updates. We don't know. It's so complicated now to recommend a camera in that lineup. The other thing I want to mention is the little accessory grip that they're including with the A7CR. I really liked.
Yeah.
I mean, the A7C original, I hated using. Like, I want to have a front control dial. The grip was far too close to the lens mount. With the new deeper grip and this little accessory, I think it's actually quite comfortable. So if you're going out shooting all day, it doesn't take up that much space in the bag. I'd bring the little grippy grip thing.
That grippy grip thing is like, I just scratched my head because it's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. Why not just make the camera just a little bit bigger? Why?
No.
It's the C for compact. It's one of the 5 fundamentals, Jaron.
I like the grip. I didn't hate the grip. I wouldn't need it. I'd be okay without it. It does improve the handling, but for me, I'd live with it. But I'd get an A7C too. I think a lot of people, of course, are still crapping on the viewfinder, and that's fair. At the price point, especially with the A7CR, you're like, maybe it should be upgraded. But it's I guess it's hard to get across in the video. It's so much better than the A7C's viewfinder. So in that regard, I think it was quite the upgrade. Whereas I know a lot of people looking at the specs, it's not. And we always complain about 2.36 million EVF. So I'm not giving them a break there, but it's so much better than the A7C, and it at least makes it a usable experience. Still not a great experience, but a usable experience.
Just out of curiosity, do you have a preference of where the EVF is located on the camera? What feels better to you? Because this is rangefinder style. It's off on the left.
I like it on the left side. Yeah,
you don't like it centered?
Because I got a big nose, and I like it. I like it on the left side where I can just get my face proportional.
Away from it. Yeah, I don't think your nose is that big. Jordan, do you care? Do you like it in the middle, off to the side?
I'm a left eye shooter, so I do prefer centro. Okay. Especially, my nose is constantly jamming on the touch screen. So I usually have touchscreen disabled, except with a lot of the Sony cameras, you have to use the touchscreen to initiate tracking. Fortunately, they've fixed that now with the latest patch. But
So my other question on this was, do you think they are priced fairly? In Canada, these are very expensive. So we're going to go with the US pricing. And I apologize for the Canadians who have to pay an absorbent amount of money. But the A7C2 is $2,200 and the A7CR is $3,000 compared to the A7 IV, which is $2,500, and the A7R5, which is $3,900. So there is a discount that's stronger on the CR side than on the C2 side. Do you think these are priced fairly?
I think it makes sense because, there's also a bigger performance difference. Like we said, the A7CR is definitely like a compromised camera compared to the A7R5, where the A7 IV and A7C2, God, this is brutal.
Terrible names.
Rattling off all these models.
Terrible names.
They're much more, actually quite competitive. So that price difference makes sense to me.
I know people want to see the A7C2 hit that magical $2,000 mark, and obviously it eventually will. But I think that's not a bad price. It is funny. You kind of have to look at both cameras with the comparison to their bigger brothers as different scenarios. And the A7C2, like Jordan said, feels like it's like an alternative. It really feels like an alternative.
Do you want it big or do you want it bitty?
Yeah, you want more small compact, and frankly, you do get better autofocusing, right? You do get that, so better IBIS. So you're actually getting upgrades. Whereas, as Jordan says, the A7CR, the nice thing there is I figured it might be more expensive. So compared to an A7R5, you could look at that as being a budget thing. I mean, it's almost 25% reduction, right? So that's significant, and I think you are still getting the fantastic focusing. You are still at the heart of it, getting that great 61 megapixel sensor. So I see the A7CR as almost being like a budget-friendly camera for people who want the main benefits of the A7R5, but don't need the fancy body and, the faster frame per second shooting, and the IBIS is still good. It's still been improved. So yeah, 8K. I mean, who needs 8K?
Yeah, the 8K right? is actively bad on the A7R5.
So that's not a loss. So I see the A7CR is actually the budget camera. And frankly, between the A7C II and the A7CR, it's not like the biggest gap price. It's big, but it's not the biggest.
Yeah, if I were going to like just shoot on a tripod, like do landscape or especially like architecture, like all those people should grab an A7CR. That would be fantastic. You're just using the LCD anyways. It would be totally usable. But if I'm going to go take a portrait and put the camera up to my eye, I'm going to go for the bigger bodies.
So that kind of leads into the discussion I want to get into, because like, what is Sony thinking right now when it comes to their camera lineup? So I was going to end with this, but I think it's better to start with it because this is a good way to get into the mindset. I want you both to tell me every camera in Sony's line from entry level to highest end pro. And I want to know, like, so we had
someone... Do we do one and then the other person does
I think
the next,
so.
Or we go all the way up the line?
Let me tell you right now, there are so many that I'd be very impressed if you get them all. I don't think you can.
Are we doing full frame only, or are we going from crop?
Oh, every camera, every ILC, because this is the thing. They classify entry level. They use that word on multiple types of cameras, whether it be APS-C or full frame. Now they may add words in there to make it, some point of like line drawn, but the average camera buyer is going to see entry level and then they're going to see Sony and try and pick something. Right. And I'm looking at the line right now and this sucks. So there's too much here, but I'd love it if you two former camera store employees could tell me, the clueless buyer, what I have to pick from.
There's still some cameras from when we worked at the camera store, which was 5 years ago. Go, Chris.
Well, this is tough because like the assumption that we've always made is that Sony doesn't discount any, discontinue any cameras. But they do. They have discontinued a few.
Yeah. So these are really ones that you can still currently buy. Jeremy Gray, our news editor, he put together this list. And these are the ones that he says he could find actively being purchased right now. There's even after his research, there were some he wasn't actually sure. So I'm going to be a little bit lenient.
The most basic one, I think, I don't know, price wise, is probably the ZVE10 because that's the vloggy vlog. So I guess that's where we started. Okay,
that's where you start.
So then I'm going to go 6100 is the next one above that.
Correct. Okay. Now, is the A6000 still available?
I think it is. No.
See, that's funny. You guys just did what he did. I'm not sure is what he wrote, and you basically just covered that.
So, only insofar as I think they made so many that you can still find them for sale.
Yeah. I trip on them all the time because that was like the most popular camera in the world for 4 years.
Okay, so A6 or A6100, those are the ones. Yeah. They're basically they're comparable. So that's the next one. Correct.
So then we're going to go into the APS-C bodies, and I'm sure the 6300 was discoed. I think I remember that. So. 6400 I think is still available.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going to say the 6600 is still available.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Well, then that's easy for me because it'll be 6700 next because that is obviously available. Okay.
We're going to
lots of APS-C bodies available.
What the hell? Already. This is about a quarter of the way through and this is what we have. This is absurd.
One discontinued body and like one that we're not sure it's still available. We think it is.
Imagine someone coming in and saying they wanted a Sony APS-C camera and you already had to give them an option among 5. Here are 5 choices. And then you have to explain why you might want one over the other. Awful. This needs to be truncated to 1 to 2. This is not necessary. There is no reason to have an A6100 and an A6400. Combine that into one camera, we'd be done. The 66 to 67 does also no longer need that line.
No. Why is the 66 still there?
Just discontinue the camera, Sony. Just discontinue it. It's okay. So we won't judge you.
So funny.
And then the ZVE10 is weird because it's not even like named the same as the rest of these. So it's like hard for someone to understand like why would they not get an alpha series when they would get a Z series? That doesn't make sense mentally. Okay.
So whose turn is it now? Is it my turn?
Yes, it is your turn. What is the next camera?
So now we're in full frame. Oh, this is... Because the problem is there's A7s, and I don't know how long it goes back.
What would your guess be?
The A7's gone. I know the original's gone.
Correct.
So I don't think the 2 is still available. So I'd say A7C, I guess, would be the next one.
I believe the 2's available.
The 2 is still available.
Oh, you sons of
it's
nice
nuts.
ladies.
Yeah, so Jordan just usurped that. He is correct. It's A7 II. So if A7 II is in there, what's next?
So A7 III, I guess, would be next, right?
No, A7C.
C.
Oh, no, but I said A7C. I said A7C.
No, but you got it wrong. So it is A7
okay,
II,
whatever.
A7C.
But I already said A7C. So A7
I love this game. This is great.
You're right.
A7 III is next.
A7 III is next. So to recap, it goes A7 II, A7C, and A7 III.
Okay.
Next, Jordan?
I'm going to say there's the R3 still available. R3V.
R3V?
So this is where it gets hinky because it's not really sure where these things fit. So A7 III is on this list, but there are 2 cameras ahead of it that you've missed. That would, he believes, technically fall if you were to put these in a line under it.
So are we doing this by price?
R2?
It's not by price. It's by, if you asked Sony in what order would they say these are designed to be like filling niches for.
Oh, that's different than what I thought it was by price.
But you've gotten pretty far thinking on price alone.
Yeah,
but now this is where it gets weird because just as we were just discussing, the A7C II, for example, has features that the A7 IV doesn't. So it's not like, and even though the price is lower, it's technically better in some areas.
But I still think they would consider that like an entry level camera. So I would say A7C II would then be your next.
Correct. It would be going A7 III to A7C II, even though it's weird.
That's so stupid.
There is one other camera between the A7C II and the what did you say, Jordan?
I said A7R3A.
Yes. Okay, you did. There is one in between there.
Is it the ZVE1?
Correct.
Yes!
That's where he put that. Okay. And you said A7R3A?
Yes.
Is that a camera?
That's just they ran out of the old LCDs, I'm guessing. So it's the same camera with just a new LCD.
The V2. Okay, in the United States it's known as the V2.
Interesting.
That is in there. Yeah. All right. So to recap, because this was hard to get to this point for those listening.
Is everybody confused at home? Because I am.
A7 II, A7C, A7 III, A7C2, ZVE1, A7R3. Okay.
A7R3.
We are a little over halfway done. Is that? I mean, just think how absurd that is. We are only about halfway done.
Okay, so A7R3
after A7R3.
Yeah, and so the A7S is going to be in there somewhere, but that's a video camera. So
it was not on his list, but you're right. That should be on this list.
If we're going by whatever's next from Sony, I would say A7 IV would then make sense. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Then what comes after A7 IV?
A7R4 version 2.
A7R4 version 2?
That is on here, but he put 2 cameras in front of it technically. But I think you might be right. I'm going to go ahead and say you're right here.
Yeah, A7R4.
Yeah, I think that he should have put this in front of the next 2.
Okay, because then just like they did with the A7C2, there's going to be the A7CR in there as well. I think at this point.
Yeah, A7CR would be after A7R4. He has it coming before, but I disagree. I think the A7R4 would come first because the sensor's older and it's not as okay. So A7R4, then A7CR.
So then, Jordan, what about video? You're the video guy. Where do these A7Ss fit now?
Yeah, so I think the S would be...
What's even still available?
Oh, no, because there's also the FX3.
Okay, this doesn't include
and the FX30.
There's no FX cameras in this list. This is only Alpha Series and Z Series.
Okay, so A7S3 then, I guess, would be next to
Correct.
Can you still get S2s?
I don't think so. I think Jordan has been very accurate with these. I'm very impressed. All right, we got 3 more cameras.
Oh, we have more
than
cameras, don't we? Okay, so
A7R4 you said.
You've already done that. All right, so the last camera on this list...
So A7R5 is
correct.
Is simple. Yeah.
Correct. Last 2.
A9 Mark II?
Correct.
But I believe you can still get an A9.
I will double check that for you right now.
I'm pretty sure you can still get the A9. But then if the A9 II is correct, well, then it's the A1, right? That's,
The Alpha 9 is not available.
No? Okay. I think I've been very accurate, too. I'm so competitive, you guys.
Okay.
Oh, no. Jaron, he's using that tone I warned you
I know.
about.
It was sassy. All right. So as a recap to those listening, these are all the cameras that you have to choose from. Sony ZV-E1, A6000 or A6100.
ZV-10, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, ZV-E10. My apologies. A6400, A6600, A6700, A7 II, A7C, A7 III, A7C2, ZV-E1, A7R3, A7 IV, A7 CR, A7S3, A7R4, A7R5, A9 II, A1. This is stupid. This needs to be reduced.
Yeah.
Discontinue cameras.
It sounds like one of those people showing how far they can go through pi is what it sounds like. When you're doing that.
It's like, so here's something I noticed when I was listening to you do your video on the two new cameras, the CR and the C2. It was mentally a challenge to sit there and try and keep track of which one of these cameras you were talking about.
My wife said the same thing. She's like, my brain just clicked off as he was rattling model.
So hard. And this is not your fault. Yeah, this is not your fault, Chris. You did this as best as you could, but Sony has made this impossible. They've created niches with inside of niches. And this is already an enthusiast level hobby to where you would even care about any of this. God, I am really suppressing the urge to cuss right now.
So 6400 needs to go. 6600 needs to go. A7R3 needs to go.
The A7 II needs to go.
Yes. I'm surprised that even still existed.
A7C original should have never come out.
No, it should stay. It should stay.
Why? Why would you buy an A7C?
Because that should be their cheapest full frame camera, right? I don't know.
No, A7 III.
All right.
But in that case, do you need an A7 III and an see how stupid?
No.
Okay, we don't need to do their work for them. They need to clean up their own line.
Let's move on.
I put this akin to basically what happened with Apple between the Steve Jobs eras, when he left and when he came back. When he came back, the first major time he revamped the company, the problem with Apple's lineup was that it was incredibly confusing. There were way too many products, all kind of overlapping with one another in a way that consumers did not know how to make sense of. So he reduced it to some very small number of products, and that was it. And they sold really well because of it. He took all the guesswork out of it. Now, Steve was not a good person, and I don't like pointing to him as this paragon of businessman, but this was something he did correctly. And Sony desperately needs to clean this lineup, especially considering that all of their products are letters and numbers. There's no words there. So
but it's funny because they obviously know they're doing this. Like this is their method, right? So, and nobody else does this. So it's interesting.
Well, and they keep gaining market share. So there's no one.
Do they?
Like, oh, what we're doing is working.
I don't think they're gaining market share. I think they're holding, and Canon is actually in there with them. So it's like they're sharing it, and it's like Sony's not gaining large chunks of market share. They had a bunch when they started mirrorless, and they've been kind of holding as Canon is caught up.
I keep saying I want to see more camera models like the Rebel. You know, I want actual words like how we name cars. I think that would be so, because I've said for the longest time, if Canon has the Rebel, then Nikon needs the Pirate. You know, as their like entry level, the Bandito. Yeah, no, I don't know.
One thing I think is worth talking about also about these cameras is you brought it up, and it is an important point. Sony is making it even harder to invest in a camera body when you know in a year and a half a camera that's cheaper is going to have some features that are better than the one you just bought. Yeah. So perfect example, A7C2 and A7 IV. The A7 IV doesn't have, I'm putting air quotes, AI.
We should always use the air quotes for AI. I'm trying to make that a rule.
I'm doing the DiCaprio squint.
This camera keeps learning. I can't stop it from learning.
When the AI robots blast you with the laser gun, make sure you're holding up air quotes.
Then it will be legit AI, and I will be like, I'm not going to use the air quotes when I say, "Don't kill me, AI."
So if you,
but you'd be like, hey, "Don't kill me, AI."
So if you guys were putting you back behind the counter at the camera store, and someone came up to you, and you were trying to tell them what camera to get, does the fact that Sony will not do a firmware upgrade to make a camera competitive in a year and a half compared to whatever they're going to release in that period, is that in the back of your mind when you make these recommendations?
I wouldn't.
And do you think it matters?
Oh, so my opinion, and everybody's going to disagree with me because everybody hates me. So my opinion is, I could see Jordan's face even though I'm not looking at the screen. It's still about the right tool for that person at their budget. So you can't, I can't really, as a salesperson, I wouldn't really be that really looking forward to say, look, you're going to get screwed in a year and a half because that's not guaranteed. Yeah, I know. But everybody does that to some extent. So you asked me as a salesperson behind the camera store, would I do that? No, I would say like, if this is the tool for the job that you need right now, that's how I would sell it. That's how I've always sold it.
Okay. Now, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more difficult in video because that's so much more firmware dependent. Because, like the A7S3, A7S3 is missing a lot of the features of the ZVE1 that shares the same sensor that came out at a lower price later. Like that would really suck if I bought it. And I know that A7S3 users are by far the most vocal about, I'm losing feature, I paid a premium price and I'm not even getting basic stuff like breathing compensation, their focus map, now things like auto reframing, or A1 users, going back and looking at that camera, I was shocked at how many features we now have in Sony cameras that just aren't available. Even like their new like function menu for video that I really like using, not having access to that. It just felt like stepping back in time. And that's an incredibly powerful camera. I understand some of its hardware limitations. They can't go back and put their AI, I'm going to
air quote it one more time.
Yeah, exactly. Unit in those. But yeah, basic firmware, it drives me, like Sony's policy, I think is just very anti-photographer, videographer.
Yeah, it is not. The Alpha 1 is a really good example because that camera could be so much better, especially if you look at what Nikon has done with the Z9 and also the Z8 still. Like that they're going to be supporting these cameras because they have a history of doing so. So like when you look at how little attention Sony has paid to the Alpha 1 since it came out, it makes me wonder, like, I just don't understand why they don't talk about it either. They pretend like this question's not out there. They don't want to answer this. And I really am curious what they're thinking at Sony HQ in Japan about like what the rationale is to not support your most expensive camera that is supposed to be for all of your pros with even a modicum of what you're putting in a camera that is like more than half as cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, too, is we know a lot of the time what cameras are capable of. And for them to, when we say like, hey, here's a feature that makes sense with some of the other manufacturers, like I'm thinking specifically of like Nikon, Fujifilm, Panasonic here, they're like, oh, that actually, is something that we're working on, or, hey, well, let's see if that's possible. Where Sony is just a blanket, like, no, it's not in the spec sheet at launch. It's not something we're going to consider adding. Like open gate recording, we know the A1 sensor is fast enough to do that. Why not give me cool stuff? Because you have amazing technology in your camera, but they don't.
But
and
no,
it makes me a grumpy pants.
And I think it is a genuine concern. If we're gonna hammer Canon about its closed lens mount, then we should hammer Sony just as hard about how little support they give to people who have purchased their equipment.
Yeah, especially
support other than go buy the camera again. Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Before we get into tech support and comments in general, Chris, you have stuff on your desk. So this is the What Have You Been Up To segment where Chris usually uses it to show something unusual that is not related to photography.
It's not unusual.
Often.
I've been playing with my pickles. So this is, my gardening. Everybody knows I garden. So I do make my own pickles because my last name is Nichols.
That's not pickles. Why you do it.
That's why I do it. Yeah.
I think that is actually why he does it. He felt obligated.
Yeah. Well, you grow cucumbers. It's an easy plant to grow here in Alberta because we're limited in what we'll actually grow with our growing season. And they're prolific. So I started pickling, So yeah, look at this. I got lots of jars. Jordan always gets one of these. Hot chilies in there, mustard, bay leaves, peppercorns, garlic, dill from the garden as well. So yes, Nichols pickles.
Do you do them shelf stable? There
you go. I just do fridge pickle style. I don't do the boiling canning thing.
I don't like that either. I don't like how that affects the cucumber texture.
Personally, they get soft and mushy.
Pickle. Yeah.
And then I actually did. You remember the big zucchini from last week? So, or not?
How could
Can
you
Does everyone remember my gigantic? So I've actually been pickling zucchinis as well. Actually, they taste really good. So I found a way to consume
You're a zucchini convert.
When pickled.
Yeah, they're not good any other way, except in bread, as we've previously discussed. Jordan, what have you been up to?
I've been editing videos that we have been releasing on our YouTube channel.
No, you've been working? No way. Yeah, we've got a lot coming up here, and I know how busy you are. This week was busy. Next week's busy. The week after that is going to be busy. We have a lot coming, and it's yes. I'm sorry. You like to edit your own videos, you say. I do, but it's times like this where I feel like you could use help.
Yeah, there's been a quality of life sacrifice, especially because my wife's at condo right now, so I'm also single dadding right now. But anyways, we're gonna get through it. Next Tuesday is going to be awesome. So make sure you're subscribed and refresh that page every hour, all Tuesday next week.
And there's, obviously we can't talk about, but there's some exciting products coming up that we're playing with.
September is large in what it's doing. Like August felt slow because it's all backloaded here. And then September is just full of stuff.
Yeah. Be ready.
Briefly, what I've been doing is painting the inside of the house that I recently acquired because I think I mentioned before that there's not a single surface on this entire house that was not painted poorly. Like there's at least 2 shades of color on every wall. It sucks. So we're going in there and repainting everything, and it is not easy.
I think everybody has to realize, and Jaron is now realizing that his "What have you been up to last week" will be working on the house for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks at least.
Foreseeable future. Yeah, trying to get a hold of journeyman craftsmen to fix things because you can't. The demand for electricians is through the ceiling right now. It's impossible to get one.
Is that a pun?
There's sinkhole under my concrete pad.
Legitimately, I can't find an electrician. All right, okay. Let's move on to tech support. Jordan, you're going to lead this one. We have one question this week, and it's all you.
Okay, so Juju Glassman, which is an excellent handle. I hope that's your real name.
Actually, this was an email.
That's
an
awesome name. Oh, great. So they were looking for something with very flexible settings for both frame rate and shutter speed. So they want to create like some blurry look with 360-degree shutter angle, which is absolutely something that you can do in normal record modes. The thing is, they want to go to like really slow frame rates, like 1 frame per second, 2 frames per second. And that does get really difficult because, you could absolutely record at, 24 frames per second, but your slowest shutter speed is going to be a 24th of a second, or you're taking a photo and building a time lapse. So on most cameras, this is actually something that's really difficult to do. And they said they're looking around like $1,000 to $2,500 price range. And what's really great is there are a lot of Panasonic cameras that are going to let you do both. Choose a variable frame rate and also use shutter angle in conjunction with that. The big problem with, Sony has a slow and quick mode available in them, but they're usually your minimum shutter speed is going to be your frame rate, even if you're going to like those slower frames. So on the Panasonic side, you can put it to variable frame rate. You choose your output frame rate, you dial in your shutter angle. It gives you all kinds of creative options, and then it's just going to export as a video file. So you don't have to go to the hassle. Generally, what I would do if I were looking for this is, shoot like 1 frame per second with a 1 second shutter speed and build a time lapse out of it, which is super cumbersome. So I do really like this flexibility. And then there you've got this in like a GH6 if you were looking at Micro Four Thirds, or you could move up to the S5 II, S5 IIX that's filming me right now would be a really great option for that. And it just opens up a lot of creative freedom. And I want every camera manufacturer to give me this flexibility. It's not that hard to program in a frame rate and a shutter speed. And almost no one does it. They want to segment it to the cinema lines. And
it's shocking how few cameras even give you shutter angle in degrees, which is really handy. It's shocking how few companies actually do that. They force you to go into like a photographic shutter speed and, match your frame rate based on what you want for the effect. It's weird.
Yeah, like if you want to create a brilliant movie I watched recently is Chungking Express, which is all shot with like low frame rate combined with a very slow shutter speed, and it looks incredible. That's a movie you should all watch because it rules.
Well, Juju Glassman even references that very movie. So,
that's probably what made me think about it.
There you go.
It's a wonder how that works.
GH5 is a good option too, right? It was very affordable now.
Yeah, it does shutter speed and shutter angle. Yeah, that would be a great option as well. So yeah, certainly in that $1,000 to $2,500 range, there's going to be some good options there.
But it's going to be Panasonic.
Blackmagic does offer this as well, but I prefer Panasonic's implementation of it.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Juju, for the question. That is the only tech support question this week. So if you have other questions that would fit in there, listeners, please let us know. We're going to move on to Never Read the Comments, where we make sure to read all of the comments. And this week, the ones that they are related to are the 8K video shootout that Jordan did.
Some people had opinions on that, it turns out, Jaron.
A lot of strong opinions. So this one was an email, and it came in almost, I would say, within the exact amount of time it took them to have, after we published and then watch your entire video, this came in. So we're talking within 30 minutes. Jason Carey says that 8K is ridiculous unless you need it for a very specific need. A good HD Blu-ray looks better than a streamed 4K or 8K signal. 8K will never be a standard. There are some use cases for 8K, but not many. It takes up too much storage, slows down computers, and will never be used for TV mastering. He's basically saying that this entire exercise was not necessary. Mm-hmm. Jordan, do you agree?
I mean, this is great because I've lived through this. This is one of the benefits to being older is when 4K came out, the exact same argument. There's no 4K. Thing. No 4K panels. It's way too hard on your computer. And all of those were absolutely valid. I do think we're getting to the point of diminishing returns if people are using like a regular television screen with a comfortable viewing distance. But absolutely, if I'm sitting at a desk working, like I can see the difference with 8K video and 8K display, there are applications for it, and storage and processing is going to get cheaper and cheaper.
It already is.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, it's more manageable, I would say, to work with 8K than what 4K was when it first came out. So we're already a little ahead. Is it something that I need? I mean, I refer to the people who say that they need 8K as maniacs in the first 15 seconds of that video. Like, no, I don't think it's an essential thing. I think there's a lot more valuable things that they could be putting effort into, like standardizing HDR, like good-looking HDR, I think is way more compelling.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Than more resolution. Yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, at least numbers everyone can agree on. It's like it's got more pixels. Yeah.
I think this very Sith-like absolute of saying 8K will never be a standard. That was a Star Wars reference. I don't know if you cared. That to me is, you can't say that. You because that was the same, like, as you mentioned, 4K. People were like, I don't need 4K. What do we need 4K for? And now I'm like, I watch something that's not 4K on my television.
Yeah. I remember when we went to Japan years ago. I may have already, and sumo was, there's a sumo competition we got to see, but the broadcasting, they were advertising 8K, like the TV broadcasting was in 8K, right?
That was like 6-7 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, Jason Carey's right. It is ridiculous in a lot of ways. It is very rare for very specific needs, but at the same time, I think it's negative to look at it as brainwashing or pissing contest. It really comes down to, it's just the way it goes, right? More megapixels. It's up to you if you actually need that or not. It will become a standard, I guess, at some point. I'm sure it will.
Yeah. When I think about something like the Apple Vision Pro or something like that, I'd rather capture my footage in 8K.
You need that resolution when you start getting into like what your eyes can process.
When your eye is that close.
Yeah. I mean, people said that about 4K, and now people regularly watch YouTube channels in 4K. So
yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, nah.
Okay. So,
happiness, more optimism, less negativity.
All right,
but you're not
here we go. From Andrew Mason. As a Nikon shooter, I would love to know what Sony is doing to get such good battery life and understand why Canon and Nikon can't do the same. Battery life is one of the two main reasons I prefer my Z9 over my Z8. More customizable buttons is the other reason. Actually, never getting an overheat warning and just the feel of the Xenon are two more reasons.
So many reasons.
I like that this was stream of consciousness. That's great. Yes, I know the Z9 is heavier, but I'm surprised to hear myself saying how good it feels in hand. So, but basically, what is keeping Canon and Nikon from making their batteries as good as Sony's?
Backwards compatibility. They're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And it's totally keeping them back. Sony said, we have W batteries. They suck. I haven't had to use a W battery in years, thank God, because they're terrible. And moved to completely new technology. And recently, Fujifilm did the same thing. Brought out their new battery series, which is comparable life to what we see with Sony Z. It's not like Sony has developed some sort of battery technology no one else has. They just are using current technology and not worrying about backwards compatibility.
I thought about that.
I can't talk to the specifics of the technology involved, but I would also say Sony probably has an advantage when it comes to their processors and how energy efficient they are. Because I know that's something they've worked on a lot with their new processors, is to actually, you see substantial improvements in battery life on camera models when they upgrade the processing unit and say, oh yeah, it's the same battery that we had before, but we're getting way less heat loss, inefficiency. We're getting better efficiency across the board just for running everything the processor runs. And so that's another big part of it too.
Yeah, like Canon with the R6 II dramatically improved battery life with that older battery again, which really surprised me. So it's possible, but I think both Canon and Nikon should just abandon backwards compatibility. No matter what professionals are telling them, it's going to suck. It'll be pulling off the Band-Aid, but it'll be worth it in the long run.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about this, but this use case is not normal. But my dad has an original 1D, and I had an R3 that I used on a shoot recently. You guys were there. Well, that's all I can say about it. His camera battery, we were like, is your battery dead? I don't know. Maybe your camera died. I just pulled the R3 battery and put it in his 1D, and it worked. That's not okay. That doesn't need to happen. I would have much rather had a different. I think if that meant I got better battery performance out of that big chonker, because that's the big boy. That's not the little ones that most of these take. It is kind of silly that the backwards compatibility is still there. I mean, it's cool, it's nice, but if that's holding me back from better battery life, we can leave it.
Let's all be thankful we're out of the nickel metal hydride days.
That's true. Yes, that's true. Tom Ole asks, or rather says, a few things that I think should have been mentioned in the 8K shootout.
Yeah, Jordan.
You're like you weren't there, Chris?
I was filming in 8K.
I accept feedback while you're filming. Chris, tell me what I missed.
I'd like to have seen IBIS performance compared across the three for handheld. Does good IBIS come at the cost of cropped video footage? Sony Active Steady Shot, for example. What is the breathing performance of the associated native lens ecosystem?
I'm not going to do that in a camera review.
What support does each vendor give with respect to firmware updates to the body?
Great topic. Totally should have done it. I mean, we are just so limited by time, frankly. Yeah. Like when I came to Chris and like we're comparing 3 cameras as opposed to a 2-camera shootout. We recently did that A7 IV versus R6 II video. We're limited by time, and I don't think I would do breathing performance of the lenses because third party can absolutely offset that for everyone but Canon. But I had to get one dig in there. But but yeah, firmware is something that I definitely considered, and stabilization as well. Absolutely. We cut them for time, and maybe one day, if you people are demanding 40-minute episodes, then, well, frankly, I'm not going to make them.
Jordan throwing out you people. No, I mean, Tom is right, but at the same time, this is always. Absolutely. This has always been a challenge for any of our shootouts, even the 2-camera shootouts, right? Not to mention when we would do entry-level APS-C body shootout. There'd be 7 cameras to look at, right? Like you gotta sort of just
compare everything.
You gotta pick the ones that you have to, and just you gotta throw the others away and then deal with the horrible repercussions in the comment sections.
We should just do a Patreon where you want to watch the whole episode with all the categories. That's $7 a month, mother effers.
And then they're 2 hours and 46 minutes of these jokers.
We would need to get you some editing help because I don't feel like that's a feasible request even for $7 a month.
No. I don't think he'd even edit it. He would just let it run as one big stream.
Unedited, just streamed.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what the podcast is.
There you go. We'll do shootouts on our podcast.
Paul Rodeo says, maybe a segment could include the quality of retrieving stills from 8K. Mm-hmm. Is that feasible? Is that an appropriate recording format for that? I hadn't really thought about this since Lumix used to do the extract from 4K as a thing. I'm sure they still do. It's just not, I never used it. Is this a thing?
Yeah. You're talking 33 megapixels. I mean, it's tons of detail. The main issue, and I'm sure Jordan will agree, and I'll let him talk about a most appropriate record format, but is the shutter speed, because if you're following 180 degree shutter angle rules, if we're shooting 24, 30 frames per second, we're typically shooting 48th to 60th of a second shutter speeds. And the problem there is you can only then pull stills if the camera's not moving and your subjects aren't moving quickly, because like any photograph, you're going to get motion blur at those shutter speeds if there's movement. So the problem is we don't often shoot video at fast shutter speeds. Therefore, the feasibility of pulling sharp frames out of said video can be challenging, except in the most still of situations.
Yeah, you just have to choose. I've said this for years. Do you want to extract stills? If so, you totally can. Crank your shutter speed up. Red really pitched their cameras this way because they shoot lossless compressed RAW. You can extract full quality RAW frames from every single frame. And it makes a lot of sense for like high-end action work and stuff like that. It is absolutely a use case. You just have to be aware that your video is going to be jittery and stuttery after the fact.
Yeah, you can't be shooting a video application and expect to pull stills out of it all the time, right? You got to kind of think ahead of time what you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, potentially smartphones are capable of doing this as like very quickly shooting something back to back at two different shutter speeds. We might see that capability in the future where it would be like within the gap between frames, it records one at a 60th and one at a 1,000th of a second and saves them to separate folders. It's possible. It's just going to take a ton of processing, but that's where we'll actually be able to get simultaneously shoot and extract frames. And if you have a high resolution like action camera or phone, it always shoots at fast shutter speeds anyways. So you can absolutely pull frames from those.
So Jordan, tell the viewers, if you're not shooting lossless compressed RAW camera, what kind of compressed record format would be most appropriate to still be able to do things with the photos afterwards?
Well, with all the camera, well, not all of them, because the Sony only shoots RAW at 4.2K, but you can shoot RAW video and really process that, extract frames from it. It is a legitimate workflow. I would probably shoot log and use a custom LUT and apply it to your photos. Some cameras are even letting you do that to the stills now. Some when you really don't want them to let you do that, and you accidentally shot a bunch of stills in a log profile. That would be what I would do, because then you can grade it the same way you do in video. But if you don't have experience working with log video, then you could shoot RAW video and play with that, or just shoot it with a profile that you like and treat it like it's a JPEG.
I've 100% shot in RAW, Blackmagic RAW, and then just extracted one single RAW file and used that as a picture. I've done that.
Yep.
Works great.
I think it's also worth pointing out, it's like pulling stills from video seemed like a really interesting way to sort of mimic high speed burst rates, right? And be able to pull those shots out. I know for a time it's kind of gone away, but for a time there, manufacturers have been advertising that, right? As a way to sort of, for action sports, wildlife, get these fast burst rates, capture every single frame possible. But now with stacked sensors, I think we're going to see a lot of cameras going back to electronic shooting. Well, we have seen it at like 60 frames per second or even faster, where you're essentially getting the benefit of so many frames in a short time period to pull for action sports that you're not going to have to really necessarily pull frames out of video.
Yeah, it's just clunky.
Yeah.
All right, two more things. This one you answer almost every week, but you get asked almost every week. But I'm going to ask you again, just in case they didn't hear it last time. William Burkholder asks, Jordan, what do you use for everyday work projects that are not camera reviews? What do you, in all caps, you use or need to use? Do you need to use 8K? And that's a separate question. And then what's your favorite go-to system for video these days? Do you use 8K, Jordan?
When I'm reviewing cameras, absolutely. For family stuff, absolutely not.
For like,
no,
if you were actually going to make a film, would you use 8K?
Potentially, because depending on how I was delivering, like the last actual film I worked on, we shot in 6K, delivered in 4K. I talked to you about that, Jaron, on your previous podcast. Years ago. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, more resolution just gives you more options in post. The thing a lot of people don't understand is by the time you're paying a crew, like an electrician for the day costs way more than your camera rental package to shoot 8K and have a DIT there. So, why not shoot it at 8K, in super high resolution? As long as, I like the look of what that camera can output. A lot of DPs are saying, like, I want more dynamic range, so I'm going to shoot it on ARRI and have lower resolution, more DR. That's a creative choice. But more resolution is not a detriment if you're making a film. For my family stuff, a while ago, we just said like, okay, we're doing 4K 24. So all of our home videos are consistent. We can cross-cut stuff from any year because that's the kind of nerd I am. I think about that,
So
I was pregnant. I'm like, we got to settle on a frame rate for home videos before this baby's born.
This baby's coming out like Chungking Express. It's going to be lots of motion and movement and blur.
We're shooting at 6 frames per second at a sixth of a second. It's going to be amazing.
This birth is going to look like a drug-induced fever dream. It's going to be great.
And what are you shooting as a camera right now as your go-to?
Whatever I'm reviewing that week. I mean, it's really the true answer.
What do you want to be using?
I do love Panasonic. They're the cameras that just feel most natural for me to be using.
I mean, the cameras that Jordan shoots, mostly it's been, S5 II, GH6, right? Like those are cameras that Jordan, you have lots of cameras to shoot the episodes with. That's what he chooses to shoot. So that is his go-to.
All right. Final question, and this will take us right to the end. We have a couple minutes to answer this. This one is
a good
from
question.
Doug on SpeakPipe. Let's listen in.
Hello, Jaron, Chris, and Jordan. As a hobby photographer, I found myself chasing Alice down the rabbit hole when I learned about the Hasselblad X-Pin. I fell in love with the cinematic aspect ratio, the characteristics of film photography, and the width of medium format with 35mm compression, but couldn't justify the continually increasing cost. This led me down a path to Tito Ferranden's ad hoc projector anamorphic lens rigs and will likely culminate in an impulse purchase of a Sirui or Greatjoy anamorphic lens for still photography use. All of this to say, in your time as photographers and videographers, have you ever wandered down a very niche or specific rabbit hole in order to create your art or to achieve a specific purpose, and in the end, was it worth your time, energy, and money, or was it just another case of gear acquisition syndrome?
What do you think, Chris? Have you ever done this?
This is a great question. Obviously he's speaking to something to do with anamorphic lenses, doing these special rigs and stuff. And that's an interesting way. There's a lot of crazy things where you can build your own stuff. For me, I'm not so much a photographic experimenter, but as far as going down a rabbit hole, I've certainly done that. I mean, I went down the medium format rabbit hole. I had a TLR, Mamiya C330 TLR, and I played with that for a lot. Honestly, I couldn't shoot because everybody would stop me and ask me, what is that camera, constantly. It was like so obtrusive.
It was like you had an X100V.
Yeah, exactly. And then I did go down the 4x5 rabbit hole. I got myself a Linhof Technica 4, and I tried that. And I get the appeal. I see the beauty of it, taking your time, slowing down. But I like to kind of shoot more on the fly and shoot more on the move. So I found it kind of a slow process. And dust is always a pain in the ass and such. So that would be my rabbit holes, different formats. And I keep coming back to 35mm or now digital, of course.
I actually went down the anamorphic rabbit hole specifically that was mentioned here when I was testing some anamorphic lenses. Even early on when anamorphic adapters hit, I love the look of it, but it took a long time. And I shot photos with it, which was a real pain, is like you have to look through the viewfinder at a squeezed image and try and visualize what it's going to look like when it's de-squeezed. But I went away from it because the majority of what I shoot is camera reviews. And it turns out anamorphic doesn't play really nicely with 4x3 and 2x3 images. And it's something actually some friends of ours are struggling with at this very moment. It was a real problem because if I could, I would have absolutely shot our show in anamorphic. I love the look of some of those DP Review and Camera Store TV episodes we shot that way. It just didn't work for our format, but I would love to pull it out again for a creative project in the future. Like, it's an aesthetic I just adore.
So my answer to this was prior to very good stabilization in cameras. So this was years ago. I'm actually going to show you guys some pictures so that I can put it into perspective here in a second. But I was doing a lot of work in helicopters. And because my specialty was video, I was being asked to produce video out of helicopters. This was prior to handheld, like single stick gimbals. This was basically right when the very first DJI Ronin came out, which was like the big hulking one with the two arms. It was either that or the free fly units. Those are the only ones that were available. So
I hope this is something to do with bungee cords or something to do with like aliens. Body-mounted machine guns.
I was one of the only guys who was shooting 4K aerial footage in California. who had this, who knew helicopter pilots and who was working with people who I could actually do this with. So I actually, let me share it now. This is what I eventually was using in one case. This is a picture of me in the helicopter using.
Yeah, buddy.
Have you seen this unit before?
Yeah.
That's underneath my camera. I don't know.
The balls.
The black
Yes.
balls. So inside.
Good form.
So for the viewers listening, Jaron is cradling large black balls below this. Yes, 4 of them below this Blackmagic camera out of a helicopter.
The original Cinema, the least ergonomic camera ever made.
So heavy, terrible, but it shot 4K and it made very pretty footage and it shot it in RAW. Anyway, inside these black balls are spinning gyros, and they're all spinning at a rate where they will attempt to hold whatever plane you've given it. So if I straighten it, it fights you on it too. If you try and change what your straight line is, it'll push you back. So that was the very first. I talked to a bunch of people who had shot at helicopters, and they're like, this is the best way to go right now because it's compact. You have almost no range of movement inside Robinson helicopters, which is what I was mainly working out of. And this was a pain. I would eventually go and move towards a different. I realized this was very large, as you can see. Like, don't want to use that. So I went down a different hole, and I went, well, what if I shot on iPhone? And so I was going through multiple iPhones, multiple formats, different apps. If you look at this picture, this is me using Filmic, which is still a fantastic app. And then this little gimbal here is one of the very first ones designed for smartphones that was in this single stick design that was from a company called iCan. This worked terribly. Awful. didn't do this at all. So this really does go along the question. It's like, did I get stuck down a gear acquisition rabbit hole, like trying to find something that would actually get me the footage of what I wanted consistently? And the answer to that was eventually yes, but I had to wait for technology to catch up because the cameras weren't doing well with stabilization. Optically was not enough. When you get in a helicopter, optical image stabilization, it doesn't fight the vibration. It fights you moving up and down, but not like the jet or like this. Yep. And these Robinsons, the way the engines work, it's constantly vibrating you like up and down, and like little bits, and it was very challenging for most stabilizers.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to invent tiny little green balls for all cameras. Like for
how did I know this wasn't going to be a real thing?
Yeah. It is real. I'm going to call it Chris Nichols gyroscopic pickles, and it'll be little green balls that you put on the bottom of your cameras. And I think I'm going to be a millionaire, and you'll be so sad.
Jordan, did you have a real statement to add to this?
Yeah, I'm really glad, like right before UAVs really became a big thing, like all the drones became accessible, I got to do one shoot out of a helicopter, and I did not have a stabilizer. I used a fig rig, the big circle, and bungee corded that to the top of the helicopter, connected myself to it, and they wanted to shoot almost straight down. So it was really cool. I got to like lean out of the helicopter, basically. It's an amazing sensation, and shoot like a wildlife rescue video that way. It was such a cool experience. And I think if it was like 6 months later, probably, we would have just had a drone out there. So I'm glad I got the experience, but I shot it on an AF-100 with horrendous rolling shutter, no image stabilizer, and most of my footage is like absolutely unusable. So I got to have a cool experience. I don't know if the client's money was the best spent in that particular situation, but I've learned a lot since then.
Back in the day when stabilization was a metal ring.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. That hopefully answers your question, Doug. We have all done something similar. At least we've gone trying to do something at some point. I think me more than Chris and Jordan, because I actually was attempting to find a solution to a problem that there was no solution yet. But thank you for the question. If anyone would like to submit questions like Doug did, we have SpeakPipe. You can send us a audio clip for us to play on air, and we'll answer the question. The link to that is in the description below. And if you're listening on the podcast, it is a link in the description of this podcast episode. Thanks again to OM System for sponsoring this episode with their excellent OM1 and OM5 cameras. We're very happy they do that. And gentlemen, we will convene next week as we begin the onslaught of September, which will be full of
we're going to have things to talk about.
So much.
Yeah. All right. Click that notification bell. You don't want to miss it. There's going to be lots.
Seriously.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Catch you next week.
Bye.